Hello. Good morning. Welcome to the fruit salad that is my current playground. Playing with wgpu, egui, rapier, and causing cube explosions. The state of the sandbox that I've been playing around with for different things with graphics and physics engines and user interfaces. I'm trying to keep the code clean after I make progress, so I've been leaving myself little to-do notes when I need to clean things up. And I need to keep like going through those and actually acting on them. Not let them accumulate too much. So let's tackle the to-dos. So here we're creating our first cube. Yeah, I wanted to put in an initial rotation, and the rotations are specified using unit quaternions now. And to form a unit quaternion from an arbitrary direction, an angle, I wanted to use from axis angle, but it needs me to like put the vector into a unit vector and normalize it, and yeah, so that's a little bit too much for me. So I think I'd like to have a utility to handle this for me, unless there is something in algebra that does this more directly. But maybe until I find that, we'll just make a utility for it. Let's close some of the unrelated windows. How about close others, then utilities? There we go. So ultimately, we want a unit quaternion. I don't think I have any trait for unit quaternion. So I think we'll just make a free function, pub function. We call it unit axis angle. So it would be the axis, the slice of f. This needs to go into what? 32-bit, because it's going to the physics engine. Right. F32 angle F32 65 unit quaternion F32. All right. Let's grab this yoink, paste it here. This is axis into, and this is angle. Oh, okay, fine. Array of 3. It works. All right, so then unit axis angle. Axis is this. Angle 0.5. Ta-da, cleaned up. Because it kind of keeps bugging me, I keep forgetting. I wanted to like tweak things like the initial FOV and elevation to be this. So FOV 25, elevation 20. That would be in the info overlay, right? Yeah, 20. FOV is passed in there. FOV default. Some reason why I have it assigned to a name. But see what happens if I just put that in there. Yeah, that did need a name. Okay. FOV default 25, I think I wanted, right? Try that out. Okay, the elevation didn't get set. I think it's being overridden, which means that it doesn't really matter. Oh no, it's just it didn't hit save there. I was gonna, if either it's that I didn't save there, or it's being overridden by the main app. More likely, yeah, that I just didn't hit save. Okay, so a nice initial camera position, right? For us to add lots of cubes. All right. Next to do. Needs refactoring here. Handle message is too long. Oh wow, that is long. All right, so I guess I take the longer message handlers and break them out. Drag start is a good candidate. Oh, what? But drag start does some redundant things that I should have marked it to do for, right? This stuff about the camera and the view, or the view and the perspective, we shouldn't really be doing that here. That should be like recalculated whenever we move the camera or change the field of view. And then those matrices should be like stored somewhere, so that we don't have to keep recalculating them. So I think I will first start by making this refactored out. It's returning them, right? Yeah, let's not return them. Instead, we will just store them. Fun name. Think of a fun name. Update camera. There we go. Update camera. So instead of returning them, we just say self dot view transform and self dot projection transform. Okay, so I need to actually store them in the self. Getting a lot of state. Just saying. Where to put it? So it's a matrix for F64. I have a mix of 32 and 64-bit values in this program. 32-bit for the physics engine, 64-bit for the display. I'm wondering if I should just move to the 64-bit mode of Rapier and then that it's unified. That's like an overarching to do, I think. So did I call it projection? Perspective? Projection. It should be called projection. Projection transform. If I didn't call it that, then that's what we're going to have to rename it to. The kind of projection we're doing is a perspective. Okay, so there's a chicken and the egg problem, right? That so this is just that. Chicken and the egg problem. We it's gonna want values for the transforms, but to get those values, we have to call a method on self, but we don't have a self yet. So what do? What do we do? What's the best way to handle that? I think the only place where self is grabbed. So the only place where self is grabbed is to get the info overlay and to get the surface config. I could make it a free function that takes the surface config and the info overlay and returns the two matrices. But I think I'm just going to be lazy about it. So being lazy means we're just going to use matrix identity. Matrix 4 identity. Yeah. And we're going to say let mute this equals self. And then return OK this. But before we do that, we're going to say this.update camera. So temporarily there's identity matrices there, and then we make the camera consistent. All right, so this just needs a self in front. We're going to do that a lot, so why don't I put that in update camera as well? We're going to do that in update camera. So self dot. So that means I have a third transform. Makes me question if I need to use the individual ones, or maybe I just use. We need a composed form for that, and we also need inverted matrices for when we do our hit testing when we click on the screen. Self. In fact, here it is. Try inverse. Okay, I need to add it though. Why type something when you can copy it? Or if tools will type it for you. All right, now there's some redundant spots where we're calculating that stuff, right? Also, if I remember to do update camera in the correct places. Basically, wherever we like change the FOV or we change the camera angle. So that would be like, wouldn't that be here somewhere? This is what drag start. So when we move the mouse, right, while we're dragging, where is that? Here it is. So this is where we do update camera. Okay, so let's just search for the word projection. And I'll find the redundant code. No, no, no. Ah, here it is. Okay, so instead of doing this stuff, we would want it to be passed in with, I guess, configuration, right? Yeah, so well, first let's get rid of the redundant code here, right? So that we should just be able to get from our configuration. So this thing, right? So configuration. Well, we're gonna decompose it from the configuration. That means it needs to be in the configuration right here. Oh, I see how I actually activated that tab moves focus mode. It was doing by typing Alt M. I must have hit Alt M by accident the other day. Before. Okay, then we don't need these. And then app just needs to set it up. So back up here. So let it type it for me, and then self dot do perspective transform. Okay, and then these warnings probably tell me I don't need anything else but the matrix. Awesome. So then we can remove them. The configuration right now is just a view perspective transform, like it should have been. And we don't need a lifetime anymore. Although I guess I could borrow borrow this, right? So there we go. Then we don't have to make a copy every time. Get rid of this import we don't need anymore. And chasing down the errors here. That's dereference before multiply. Okay, and then back up here. We don't need this stuff. And this is the borrow now. Cool. And then some other warnings. We don't need to look Y or look X. Nice. We don't need the screen descriptor for draw models. Awesome. So then one fewer parameter is always a nice thing to see. Cool. Make sure I didn't break anything. Oh, wow. New record. Sorry about the shouting into the mic there. It went all red. We've gone 17 minutes without anyone saying anything. Hello, lurkers. Don't say anything. Don't unlurk yourselves. Let's keep the record going. All right. Let's add lots of cubes. Cool. Still works. I can still select something and kick it around, right? There we go. If you select something massive, kick doesn't actually do anything unless you click it a lot of times, or you add more force to it. So these really do have like more mass in the physics engine. As opposed to like these little guys who like you only need to add a tiny force and they really get going. There it goes. They don't bounce. They don't bounce enough. It's not a satisfactory bounce. I need to work on that. Ramy, you just unlurked yourself. You got cubes of different sizes now? Yes, we do. I did a bunch of work over the weekend on that. Yeah, we also have like cube explosions, which I can kill the bit rate on the stream with. Got explosions. Look at that. Boom. Wow. Yeah, it's like stress testing everything. Also, like we have a cube counter so that anything that falls below -100 on the y-axis gets destroyed. So the 91 should be all that's left on the platform here. I also have the camera always centered on the middle of the platform and kind of rotating around in a sphere around it. Howdy, Stripe Monkey and Poison Process or is it Poisson Process and Ramy? The artist formerly known as Ramy? The artist currently known as Ramy. So Ramy, there's one more level of sadness to your fact that you're an artist. Not only can you not use your own Rymu 8 EJ, but you can't use the Atom EJ either. Isn't that sad? Both of us have like given up the emotes for other people to use because we can't subscribe to either of us yet. Yeah, no more EJs. So Adam will fix that, I'm sure. He'll let people subscribe to him again, and then we'll get Atom EJ back. Can't wait. All right. Cool, so I cleaned up the renderer, right? It uses a transform that's just passed in. And this is obvious now, so I can get rid of that model. Because before we were calculating 3 different matrices, now it's just one of them. Right? So can I abbreviate this just by putting that there? Or does that look worse? I don't know. I think that's fine as two separate things, right? Especially if they're right next to each other. Okay, so what's next? I think that I was in the middle of working on this needs refactoring at the time, right? Too many lines. And I saw that those transforms are being calculated here where they shouldn't have been. Right. Okay, so now they're gone. We're just calling update camera. I need to call update camera from another place, don't I? Yeah, well, like what happens right now if we use those sliders? I think it's not going to work. I think I might have broken that. File formats? Yeah, I got lots of experience working on file formats. You're writing documentation on all the file formats you've reverse engineered over the years? Cool. Wondering if you can give you some pointers for writing documentation in a clear fashion? Sure. The best documentation style I've seen for file formats is MPEG 4. So I can show that real quick. Well, I got some software to update. Do that after the stream. So let's look on DuckDuckGo MPEG 4. Like they call it the bitstream syntax. Bitstream syntax description language. Oh, it's itself an MPEG document? Crap. Can we like get something that's not behind a paywall? Please? Okay, maybe this draft? Okay, that's not the right one. Maybe it's this one. No, it's behind a paywall again. I need like a free version. I want to show an example of it. Man, search engine. Yar har fiddledy. Hey there, Betsig. Oh, this bitstream analyzer, I've actually written that twice, 3 times now for different companies. All right. So how about we do syntax example? Maybe here? Wikipedia? I'm not doing so well. Tell you what, Rami, I'll get back to you on that. Maybe in the Discord. It's I know what spec it's in. It's inside of this 14496-10 or -1. It's in both, I think. But they're behind paywalls, right? There's like a free version of one of them, but it's a pain to try to find it. So I'll have to do that later. But they describe the syntax in such a nice way. It reads like a large composite C structure. And they even handle things like variable sized structures with conditional logic to express that like you have to parse one field and then that value you use to know how to parse the later fields. And the cool thing is they describe not only the file format but also the bitstream of audio and video in MPEG-4, like using the same syntax. So it's pretty crazy cool. And I use that as a basis for my own domain-specific language for making my own general-purpose parser that you can script, which I made one for Qualcomm, and then I made one for myself after I left Qualcomm, and I still have it. It's called the Data Disintegrator, and I did not open source it in time to get it out there before I was join the new job where I can't open source it. So it's sort of locked away in my personal stuff and for the time being. But yeah, the idea would be a language that you can describe a file format in this domain specific language, and then give it to a parser, and the parser now immediately can understand the file format. And they even have it like you can then script it with Lua to make the user interface custom for the file format. So I'll talk when I find it later. I'll send it to you on Discord. It is pretty sick, very useful, and I was kind of hoping that when I made it for Qualcomm that they would use it more, but they use it a lot internally, but they never really. I don't think they really appreciated it too much, like as in like using it for other things. But I had like, I don't know, at least 10 different file formats that I wrote the syntax for, and like some of them were super trivial, like Windows bitmap. Other ones were super complex, like H.264 is pretty gnarly because they you have to do a special kind of run length decoding for some of their stuff. But yeah, the description, I think for H.264, they use the same kind of syntax, which makes sense because it's also from the motion picture engineering group, the MPEG, right? Yeah, so yeah, see how I broke these sliders? Because I'm not calling update camera when those sliders change. So we'll make a message for that because that comes from the info overlay, and that's in here for the sliders, right here, right? So just occurred to me, how do we know if the slider was slid? Do I have to call a method on the slider to like register a callback? Or maybe I just look at the value has changed since the last time. Because this borrows it mutably, right? Does this return anything else besides the actual slider? No. So there's probably a way we can ask the slider, hey, did you change the value just now? Benedict.go is public on the Catholic University of Rio's website. Sure, if it's public. That'll help rain me out really quick. Won't have to wait. All right, so what was I looking for again? Mind went blank. It happens. Egui, slider. I just closed something. I hate it when I do that. History, recently closed. I didn't close something, never mind. Here we are, slider. Oh, that's the whole PDF link? I mean, that'll work. Yeah, that'll work. Okay, cool. We can do this. It's public, right? Yeah, all right. Check it out. Just scroll down until you see like where they describe stuff. Here we go. Look at this syntax. I know I'm like blinding you with white light. What if I do dark mode? Dark mode here. Sorry for the blindness, but so constructs are described like using classes, or you can think of them as structures, but they're parameterized. And those parameters like tell you how to parse. So or they attach extra data. So in this case, like the handler type for this box passed in as a parameter because it's parsed earlier, but you probably want to remember the handler type. Either it's used inside of parsing it or it's attached to it at the end. But like here, we parse a 32-bit integer entry count, and then we loop for that many times and parse like the elements, the entries, right? Where's a more interesting one? Oh, here's a cool one. So here are fields that are less than 8 bits long. But still, like you read an 8-bit count and then you loop for that count, and for that many times you have you parse these elements. So the way I would handle this is a loop becomes an array, and the array size is the number of times you actually looped. And then each index of the array has one instance of the internals here, the slot count, the repetition count. So this would be a two-dimensional array after you're done parsing. I just like how it looks like a C function and a structure sort of combined together, and you can and the types can annotate things like exactly how many bits, or if it's variable length or fixed size, stuff like that. Where's the specification of the language the specification is written in? Actually, it's another one of the 14496 documents, I think. So it probably references it because specifications from ISO and IEC are very exact. So probably up here they describe like the syntax for this is described elsewhere. But I'd have to find it. It's in here. It's probably in here somewhere. I would expect it would be around the very top here. I don't see it though. Maybe I need to go further up. Blah, 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 blah. There's a lot of blah, blah. It's in there somewhere. Trust me. Hey there, Gadam. How are you doing? Yeah, I've been on stream for a few weeks now. I'll be streaming at this time slot, so 7 a.m. to 9:30ish. It actually talks about so it's in the foreword, yeah. So the syntax that they invented for MPEG-4, like they use elsewhere, and I think it's totally cool, and I've leveraged that a lot. It would be really cool if the standards body had actually made a program to automatically parse and use that. And I know they didn't because I have found syntax errors in the specification that if you had made a parser for that domain-specific language and just run the spec through it, you would have found those like as compiler errors. So like I know that at least for maybe what they did is they have the tool and they used it initially, but then when they had errata to fix some bugs, maybe they didn't rerun their tool. I was going to the next level. Well, I was getting paid for it at the time, so yeah. I'll go to the next level to get paid. Sure. Okay, slider. I want to know like, can I get a function called if the value changes? Defines a range. You can clamp it. It has a value display. Show value, prefix, suffix, text color, vertical, logarithmic, step by. Starting to get the feeling that it doesn't tell me if it changed the value. Unless it comes from widget. But widget only has UI, right? Yeah, widget only has UI. So if it doesn't tell us that it actually changed the value or not, that means we'll have to detect it ourselves, right? So before passing it in, we'll have to like say let FOV equals self FOV. And then if, actually I guess we could put it down at the bottom, right? So if camera changed, then self dot app sender. Where is it? Or is it just app sender? Self dot sender dot send camera changed. We just need to like let the app know. I think I can just call drop here, right? Drop the value of. We just need to let the app know that the camera changed if any of those conditions changed. App message. So we'll just add it there. Go back. So up here we would say like if FOV is not equal to self FOV anymore. And then we'll have to like initialize it up here. So let's mute camera change equal false. Oh wait, we can't look at it afterwards? So new holds on to the borrow? It does. Look at that. It holds on to that borrow. Shoot, so can I get it back out? How do I get the value back out? Or do I do this at a higher level? Do I do this like outside of the UI? I think that's the solution, right? So let's just move this stuff out. So do all this stuff like outside of draw. So put it here. So move that down to here. Now we can do it because the borrow for that is only within the context of show, I think. And I don't really need this changed. I just need to cache all the things. You found where the syntax is described? On GitHub, someone put it on GitHub. Yeah, it happens. I don't know how well the ISO, IEC, or whoever should enforce their patents or their licensing. I don't know if they enforce it or how well, but yeah, you're supposed to a lot of those are behind paywalls. Like you have to purchase a license to have a copy of the document. And they'll actually watermark it, and like if someone posts it on GitHub, Standards Body could track down who broke the license because their name is in the watermark, unless they were clever enough to remove it. They enforce it quite hard. Yeah, well, sucks to be them if they go after them and say, hey, you bought a license from this, and you're not supposed to copy it, and you posted it on GitHub. Did you convert to Linux or just a VM for Stream? It's just a VM for Stream. What are we doing today? I'm mostly fixing, cleaning up code, refactoring. There's the OS I'm doing. I'm going to these to-dos, like I marked that I need to refactor this because it had too many lines. Whoops. But I can show you the progress I've made if I just do target this one. So we have added a stress test where we can add many cubes. This is broken right now, but I can rotate with the mouse. I can select individual cubes, so we have a hit test going. So after I'm done refactoring today, if I have more time, I think we're going to work on improving the graphics. Maybe do some textured cubes. Or maybe when we select a cube, have it just draw it differently to start with. You expect them just to get a cease and desist? Well, I mean, it's pretty bad if they want you to pay for every copy of the specification and then you just leak it to millions of people. That would be very bad, right? They did that for the math solution manual you got? Oh. So they may, so ISO will do that. They'll make certain ones that are like, they deem to be like, there's not a whole lot of IP in it, and it's just really good for the common good. Like if the file format is really widespread and everyone uses it, they'll just say, okay, we'll just make it a free download now. And they might fill it with watermarks, but it'll probably say like that this is downloaded from this. I don't know what they do, but I don't know. Actually, I don't know why they would still watermark it at that point. Good for the common good. Yeah. It's all about companies and getting compensated for their work and inventing things. Whether you agree with intellectual property rights or not, that's a different story. Okay, I am not done with that info overlay, right? Because not only could the FOV change, but we could also have the look direction change, or the look, I think it's called, look azimuth. Or we could have the look elevation. Which we have to, basically we have to make a copy of what it is at the beginning. So we can compare after we've drawn the UI to see if it got changed by the slider. So I probably don't need all of these flags anymore if I just combine these together, right? And I had to get rid of these extra braces and turn these ifs into ors. And self can just be self. Why are there extra selves? I don't know. I probably did that when I was typing. Okay, and so back in the app, we have to handle that message now. All right, camera changed. Easy. We just do self update camera. Easy peasy. So that should fix my camera sliders now. Imagine I'm saying good for the common good. That would be somewhat redundant, but that's the way I said it, in a redundant way. See there, I fixed it. So we can move the camera that way or that way. Field of view will change, so will the mouse wheel. Cool. Back to that to-do. This was all about, like, cleaning up this big match. So this one's still kind of gnarly. Okay, inverting this Y because I wanted to show the camera position. I actually don't need that anymore. Why don't we just get rid of that? I don't care about the camera position. And I don't really care about the click position anymore. That was just while debugging. Let's remove those. So I don't need this one. Don't need this one. All right, then back where we set it, we can get rid of the code that sets it. Then up here, don't need that. It'll say like, okay, you didn't use some of these things. Okay, so I didn't need this world position, so this is just handle now. So this is the hit test to see what we clicked, right? Green to world. Map. So I don't need this vector hit anymore. We just use the handle. Which means this goes away to if I just return the handle. I don't care about the time of impact anymore. And I don't need an unzip. So it's just now an optional collider handle. Screen to world, I think that's the thing we should put into self. And we should set that when we update camera. So it's inverting the view perspective transform. More file format show their specs released. Well, I think it depends on, is it open? Or is it obsolete and they don't care anymore? They should just then, you would think that it would be just a polite thing to do if you're going to obsolete and like not support, like abandonware your tools or your old file formats. So you can say, well, we have this internal documentation that is specifies the format, so we'll just release it with no just like a clause saying like we're you're on your own with it. There's no warranty or anything implied. They should just do that, right? A good game font rendering library for wgpu. I don't know. I've been using just the defaults with egui, but apparently you can use whatever fonts you want with that. And this is I've heard either egui or imgui are popular for game UI overlays. So non-bevy. Well, this is bevy-ish, so I guess this isn't good. The doubling, tripling down on ISO being more focused on money and not common good. But the whole premise for ISO is for the common good because there's an organization to make international standards. The whole purpose of international standards is for interoperability, which is so that people can play nice together, right? It wouldn't. Yeah, it's the companies coming in and like wanting to like say, here, I've made this invention for the public good, but like I did a lot of hard work on it, so you owe me some money if you wanna try it out for the first 30 years or so. Yeah, I don't know. I kind of feel like file formats should be open if you're meant to exchange them with other people's products, other companies' products. But if it's an internal file format, then and someone's just like trying to reverse engineer it, then maybe yeah, maybe not. But something meant for interchange, like anything sent between different companies' programs, ought to be an open standard, right? PDF format shouldn't be behind paywall. Yeah, I kind of agree with that. And you know what? If they think that they have IP in those formats, there's an easy way to design your file format to separate the IP stuff from the non-IP stuff. Just have the IP parts of your file format in self-enclosed blobs, and then just say the format of this blob is proprietary, but we'll tell you the length of the blob, and then how to skip past the blob to read the next thing so that it can be skipped. And then you can publish the container format for free, but still hold on to the IP protected stuff. Like that's the way I would have done it. Doesn't make sense to me to like copy protect or IP protect the whole standard, especially if you're going to exchange files between vendors. You're already paying ISO, you pay taxes, government funds its own organization, which in turn funds ISO. Yeah, and sometimes the company you work for might also already be paying for, or might already be a member of the standards organization, in which case you might have access to the standards under the umbrella of working for a member of the body itself. So there's that to consider. Like if you work in any of the FANG companies, you probably have free access to, if not one, not just one, but probably many different standard organizations stuff. All right. Yeah, this I wanted to move into update camera. So we compose it and then we reverse it. So invert view perspective for use in mouse hit testing. Self dot it's what is it? Clip space. It's really called clip space to world, right? Clip to world equals, and I think it is always invertible. So we're just going to unwrap there, and then we'll define that. And I think I want to rename this one to be like world to clip. This would projection would be view to clip, and view would be world to view. Like say what coordinate space from and what coordinate space to. Microsoft solves this by making their specs for their formats insane and impossible to implement. True. Not gonna dispute that. Fill structure field. Yeah, we have to put something in for the initial clip to world. Got a warning down here. Why? Strict comparison of 32 to 64. Wait. They should all be the same type. Oh, because they're floats. It's basically saying that you should be careful with float compare. But in this case, it really shouldn't change value unless the slider moves. So we do want to allow that. Okay. Is that true? We don't need click position anymore? I think that is true. We don't use it anymore. Which means we don't need vector 2. Okay. Try invert is where it happens, right? Try inverse. Okay, so then we don't need this. We can get rid of all this stuff. So we can move the cast lossless up to here and just say self dot well, we can just do that, and then screen to world is really clip to world. Here's where we do the screen to clip calculation, actually. So was that on, does that allow on that thing? No, I don't know yet because I have errors. Where be my errors? There's one. Shoot. What happened there? Oh, parentheses. Not needed. Okay. It is needed on that statement. Okay, good. Back to 0 errors. Cool. Cool. It's like doc writers there just waiting to flex their knowledge in every doc and over-engineer every example. I think there's also a culture of not invented here. So like to this day, like Microsoft just does things differently just to be different, right? Most other operating systems follow like a Unix-like, POSIX-like kind of like rough standard way of doing things. Like there's some deviation, but not a whole lot. But to this day, like Microsoft still has backslash for path separators, where everyone else has moved to forward slashes, right? For example, some of that is because they're entrenched in legacy stuff. They can't change it without breaking a lot of things. But another part of it is like why did they use backslash to begin with? Maybe there's some historical reason, like back to where before it was really decided. But like, why not try to move towards where everyone else is doing? Because they like being different. That's what I think. They accept it in some contexts, Betzig, but not others. To this day, you can't use forward slashes in the command prompt for path separators in some places because forward slash has a different meaning on the command prompt, right? It's for it's their version of dash for single letter argument to commands. So yet again, something different. Why not use dash? Or why use dash when you can use forward slash? I'm probably unfairly bashing them. A lot of it is just because it's based on some really old operating systems from the 60s and 70s that before things were settled on how everyone would do things, like they were just different ideas. So it's probably more fair to say Windows does things because it's derived from DOS, which is derived from something else, which is derived from something else, where they were using backslash. Yeah, disk operating system. But I do still think that like when they come up with new technologies, they're very similar to existing ones, but they're like their own spin on it. But you know, Microsoft's not the only company that does that. But they're pretty easy to poke fun at, right? Okay, I'm using view to world for what? Oh, to know where the camera is. Maybe there's an easier way to calculate where the camera position is in the world. There probably is, but I can't think of it. I think I'm just going to leave this. This is all one big hit test. I think we're just going to take this whole message handler out as a new function to handle the drag start message. Refactor, where are you? Almost 8 o'clock. Handle drag start. Handle message drag start. This is totally unnecessary. We can just say matrix 2 of F64s. No, it's vector 2, right? Cool. In fact, I should probably tighten that up. I should have a type alias or a new type for that if I want to be consistent about some of these types, right? Okay. I get rid of these braces. Just adds them back and doesn't put the semicolon. Okay. This possible truncation and sign loss, where, I guess we didn't need that. So delete that. Okay, add cubes is big enough to where I feel that that ought to be refactored too. Function. Handle message add cubes. Okay, that's a value type, so we don't need to borrow, just handle by value. Then that is dereferenced then. Sweet. So then I can actually read my handle message again. I don't need the too many lines suppression. One less to do. Done. PST? I don't know. Post traumatic stress? That's PTSD. PST. Is that an old operating system? Because we were on the subject of it? I've never heard of PST. Pacific Standard Time. Oh, yes. Yeah, the comment right before PST was about an operating system, so I linked the two. Yeah, so I'm in Pacific Time. I'm streaming 7 to 9:30-ish Pacific Time. Too many lines in ad content. Yeah, our UI is getting kind of messy. What happens if I suppress it? We're back under the too many lines limit, so I'm just going to fly under the radar for now there. I'm down to 1 to do. I think the idea was that there were too many window events to handle. But this has gotten better, right? I can do that again. We're good for now. I think we're good for now. So then I'm out of to-dos. There's the might want to get this running on SDL2 note, but I'm not going to do that today. So commit this. So this is refactoring, fixing all to-dos. Okay, let's do something new. It would be nice if when I click on an object in the scene that it draw it in a different way. And I would like to learn how to load textures into this thing. So I don't know. Are there any free cube textures out there we can play with? Free cube texture. Oh, here we go. Are these actually free though? And notes not in the format that I could use. I need like a UV map thing, or like an unfolded cube, like this, like the skybox. I could render a whole skybox in each of my cubes. Have a sky on each cube. Another thing I've done this before. I could just open up Minecraft's assets and like pick out Minecraft textures. I did put the word free in front. Maybe the all search and see what we get. Cube texture images free download on free pick. I don't know what free pick is. These look like clickbait to me. This maybe looks more legit. But these are free in general textures, like not they're oh, they're for just general. Well, I guess we could use one of these. It's just they probably don't come with cube UV coordinates that I could use. But this one. Ice cube. Yeah, there's nothing. Has someone like extracted the Minecraft textures for me? I could just get a resource pack. Um, UV map. There we go. Found it. That's a YouTube video. Block bench. Ooh. Someone's product. Got 5 minutes now. We're looking at my I wanted to color. I want to put a texture for my cubes. Make them like look like Minecraft blocks or something like that. The all-inclusive guide to texturing. Where does it actually go? Now I'm in a forum post. Oh, here we go. So I could take this image and I would just have to like figure out the UV coordinates by hand, right? So if I copy that image, oh, someone's already found it for me? Hold on. Yeah, I don't need the whole texture pack though. 3 squares worth of texture? You mean Brave man clicking random links on Google? I'm not using Google. Ha! Got you there, Amy. I'm using DuckDuckGo. The ads though. Come on. Can I just open new image? It's going to imager. I want to actually just grab it. But just save image. Sure. Can I just like look at that image? Image viewer. Perfect. Cool, that's what I want. So this is basic enough that I could figure out the texture coordinates, right? So that's the bottom, and these are the 3 sides. That's the top, and that's the far side, right? Okay, let's play with this. So let's take this image. Out of the downloads. There it is. And copy it, and where to put it. we can include it completely, right? With there's a crate where you can include a binary, or you just include as a string, right? I'll have to look at this up. But first I need to just pick a place where to put it. Put it with models? Sure, why not? It'll show up here now, right? I can just rename it here. How do I rename in this editor? F2, that's what I was hitting, I thought. Oh, there we go. So, I don't know, grass? The cube, you need to add split verts. You can, of course, use it as this too. I'm just gonna, this is simple enough that I can just do it by hand, right? This is where the ping has 16 sections of it, and we're only using 6 of them. So the coordinates are like, this is 0.25, 0.5, 0.75, and 1, and 0, 0.25, 0.5, 0.75, and 1. So I can just hand code the UV coordinates for the cube, and we can see how it's unwrapped, right? This is the bottom, side, 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 top, other side. So I'm just going to go with that. We're going to have a whole bunch of Minecraft grass blocks. So the thing is, I want to be able to pull this in, and then we're going to use some kind of image decoder. So I got to look up a few things, right? So in Rust, open up yet another tab. Go to libs. Is it just image? I forgot what do I use to decode images? Imaging library provides basic image processing. That's what we want. So I want image 0.24, and they probably have an example of decoding an image, right? Ping, it supports ping. They have an example. Here we go. This is making a new image. How do I read one from a file? Opening and saving images. So just do image open. That opens it from a path. I kind of want to just bake it into the program. We'll figure it out. So we want image 0.24, right? 0.24. Image 24. It goes crazy if you save syntax errors in your cargo toml. Top of the cube is 8 verts in this case, so no split needs to happen. Yeah, we shouldn't have to. There's no no face or triangle is complex, right? It's easily I forget the word, but it's easy to make a UV map for this. Okay, so how do we include a binary file again? Is it it's like include something, right? Include bytes. That's what it was. Is that just part of Rust now? Oh, it is. Look at that. Cool. I don't need a live. Thank you, Betseg and Hardrim. So where are we gonna do all this stuff? Models feels like the right place, but I'm not sure if it is. So ultimately, we want the model to have a texture in it, right? So I'm just gonna guess that model, where is it? Model will have a texture that's per instance. Yeah. Maybe it's just constant. So so that would be texture information. Can't type. Shared by all instances. Okay, so Texture. I can't think of a better name. GPU texture. Okay, and so when we load it, well, the ground, we want to have a different texture, right? So I think this becomes optional. Does that mean I'm going to have some conditional logic in the shader, whether we have a texture or not? I think so. Yeah, so we'll have to do some shader work. So what time is it? 8:10. I got another like hour. Okay. I'm just going to hack this in for now. So texture ping is optional U8 array. Okay, and then when we get to here, fields, this is going to be texture ping map bytes to image. We're going to look at the last page we were on. Rolling down here, it was, oh no, they had it where you open a path, but I wanted to bake it in, right? So I think we just want to look at their API and look for it's image reader, I guess we want, right? Image structs. Where's image reader? How come I don't see an image reader? Image reader. Hold on, what? What? Oh, they're importing image IO reader as. Okay, never mind. Image IO reader. Okay. So it has an open. Does it have like just decode it? What about decode? That's not the one we want. Open takes the path, but if I already have it as bytes. It's really just a wrapper, so I could just use a reader. Yes, make my own reader. Okay, so there's a shortcut. Discover the concat idents has been sitting in unstable for 7 years and you're sad? That is sad. Right, monkey. Okay, you guys are telling me that image buffer, I can go directly into it. But, hold on, going back. It's this decoder I want to go into ultimately, right? Or does image buffer utilize a decoder if I do, you're saying from vec? Vec versus raw container. It starts to buffer from a generic container, for example. So I kind of want a from raw, don't I? From vec would mean I'd have to put it into a vector first. What's from pixel? Copying a pixel. I think it's this, right? I want from raw. Image buffer from raw. How come I can't? Okay, never mind. I'm struggling with my own keyboard shortcuts. Use image buffer from raw. Oh, we need to be okay. So it's not just this, right? So hold on. Let's make another structure. Structure like raw image. unless image has it, but this suggests they don't. So it's going to be U32s, right? Width, height, bytes. Means we'll need some names, lifetime, which no big deal. We can do that. And I need to actually say struct instead of stucked. It'll be stucked. Do over some lifetime A. Okay, so this goes in front of all these things, right? Go. Finally decides to work. Wait. That option raw image. Oh, it's bytes. So it's not bytes, it's raw image or image. There we go, sort of. No. And then okay, I get an image buffer, but then I need to actually import it as a texture. So to do that, don't I need to have I need to use the device to import it, right? So that's where I need to do the wgpu part. Hey there, Jolt Jab. Things are going well. Check it out. I got this like nice and smooth now. We can add like billions of cubes and it has no trouble. We had the camera angle looks a lot nicer. We're just deleting the cubes after they fall too far. I can click an individual cube and kick it around. So I can click this big guy and kick that around too if I want. For this little guy, I'll have to reduce the force. There he goes. So now I was working on making the cubes look more interesting. So I am in the middle of taking this completely original texture and designed it myself. Just kidding. And painting this on all the cubes. Yeah, stop kicking them. Well, they'll soon be grass blocks. I'm not making my own game engine. I'm just playing around. So thanks for asking, because a lot of times people have the same question, like, what the heck is he doing? And they just won't ask it. So I'm just learning how to use certain libraries in Rust for graphics and physics, and what better way to learn libraries than to actually play around with them in a sandbox. So this is sort of a sandbox. It's not going to build up to any kind of real thing. It's just for playing around. Yeah, it's not for a game. It's just me playing around. Yeah. So once it has two points of value, two things that are valuable about it. One is that it gives me an incentive, like a motivation to learn the libraries. And then when I'm done, if later I actually need to use the libraries for something like more real, like a real project, I can go back to the sandbox and use it as a place to like try things out, or really just to like refresh my memory on how certain things are used. Because if I make this sandbox and I make it tidy and clean, I can see like what are the basic ways in which I fit these libraries together and how did I use them, and then I could pull those elements out for like real projects later. So part one is for the sake of learning, but part two is I can leverage this sandbox for future projects. So if I use egui in some future project and I forget how to do a slider, oh, that's how you do. I did a slider. I just go back to the sandbox and I see how I did it. This should run in the browser because wgpu runs on WebGL. I would just need to compile it for WebAssembly and then make a little JavaScript wrapper to and a HTML wrapper to load it. But I haven't done that. So right now it's sort of just a native window. I think it's awesome. That's why I'm working on it. Hopefully, I covered all the questions at the high level. If you have any like lower level questions, let me know. My current task is I have this image. I think we're doing the decoding right, so we got an image buffer with pixels in it, but now I need to get it into wgpu, and I think that's just a matter of using this device to create a texture. So let's see, if I say let image equal that, and we'll just to quiet the compiler, we'll put a to do there, right? Just to make sure I got all this correct. Annotations needed. I think it just needs to know types of certain things. The type of the pixel is subpixel is a U8. What if I, okay, it won't do it for me. Maybe there's an example here in from raw. So it's the pixel type it doesn't really know, right? Parameterized by its pixel types. Axis. I want to be very precise about it, right? I want it to be like an RGBA image. Can I just use, they do this. Is there like a pixel type for RGBA? I don't know where to look. Just guessing that they have an enum for a pixel type. Pixel. RGBA. Here we go. So that's a struct though. That what I would put here. I'm just guessing that that goes here, right? It needs to know the pixel type. The container, I can let it guess. RGBA. Oh, no. Don't use egui's RGBA. Image RGBA. Missing generics on RGBA. What kind of generic does it have? Primitive enlargeable? What? Huh. I guess that would be U8, right? Yeah, because it's just saying that what is the type of each channel. So that would be cool. So I got an image buffer format RGBA U8 out of it, hopefully. Didn't they have two APIs, one type erased, one what type one? I don't know. I think dynamic image is one the pixel type is not statically decided. I do want to statically decide it though, because I'm pretty sure that wgpu is going to want me to specify the format, and I want to pick a format compatible with my surface, right? So let texture. I don't really need to say let texture, but we'll just say it for now. I think it's through device. Create texture. Yep. Create texture. Create texture from create texture with data. One of these two, maybe. Look at the manual. One of these. Algebra, physics engine. Do I not have a tab open for wgpu? That's egui wgpu. GUI init, egui. Unit, algebra. Huh, okay. Open a new one then. Too many tabs. wgpu. I guess I didn't really have one because I was using their tutorial, which is over here somewhere. Move that tab. I got too many tabs. Yeah, so like text, maybe I can just look at here and figure it out. Oh, here we go. Loading an image from a file. Maybe I should have started here. They're doing the same thing I'm doing. Oh, do I need to have ping as a feature? Might find out if I don't have it. Yeah, that's what I was going to do. Load from memory? Is that a shortcut to what I was doing? Load raw? Oh, my load raw won't work. That's an encoded image. This is if I had already decoded it. Okay, so from memory is more appropriate then, right? And it's not helping me, probably because this needs to be commented out. Okay. Oh, it's image, not image buffer. Huh. And then there's two RGBA. See, I should have just gone here to start with, shouldn't I? It's wrong. You do need a reader. This will turn each byte into a pixel. Yeah, you're right, Betsig. This is if the bytes was actual raw, like not encoded, right? But it is encoded, so we're not supposed to use that from load from memory. Then here I just put the image bytes. So yeah, I guess then I went down the wrong path here. We're not using the raw image. This is an optional, again, a slice of U8s, right? And we don't even really need to say it's ping. We can just say it's encoded texture image file, encoded image. How about texture or image file content? Sure, why not? Goes there. Oh, it may fail, right? So then really I should kind of like chain this. So end that, and then at this point it's an image, right? Okay, so then okay, right? Either okay or it's not. Then we get a dynamic image. Then it would be image dot to RGB. To RGBA8. That's an image buffer. Just to help me remember, that's a dynamic image. We get an image buffer from that. Okay, finally. They call create texture with a whole full-on texture descriptor. But it looked like there was a shortcut, so I'm just curious, can I use those shortcuts there? It was, oh, is it a trait that gives it to me? So create texture. Create texture from how? Create texture with data. Upload an entire texture and its bitmaps with data. Upload an entire texture and its bitmaps from a source buffer. So source buffer is something else. Expects all bitmaps to be tightly packed. Textures. I think we don't want this, right? Hey, there's 715.209. Does this mean they converted to RGBA8 in case it's not that format? I think that's what it means, yeah. They converted to that format if it's not already. Or that the actual, probably what's more likely is that the actual decoding doesn't happen until you do that. Dynamic image is like a builder for decoding the image. That's what I'm guessing. That, um, but it depends on what convert does. Does convert actually decode? Oh, that's an example. So maybe I'm wrong. Maybe this does do the decoding, and you get some whatever the decoder's default format is, and then this one um, puts it to RGB 8-bit, RGBA 8-bit if it's not already in that format. Be better is if this was a builder and we did the decoding here once we have the full specification of what we want. So it's probably not. What about probably not this decode texture with data? What about this other one? Maybe that did. Well, hold on, let me think. This is if we have all the MIP maps already, which we don't have, so we can't use that, right? So I suppose that means that we are using a texture descriptor just like the tutorial is showing me. Okay. I mean, can I just figure it out myself? This this won't be horrible at all, right? Label. How important is that label? Debug label of the texture. Show up in graphics debuggers for easy identification. So, model texture. A model. Or I can just say none, I guess. Size. We know that. It is the dynamic, or is it the image buffer? Dot dimensions. Needs to go to an extent 3D. Can I do an into? No, I cannot. They do not support converting from a tuple. So, shoot. I'll have to make one. They wanted an extent 3D? Well, that's right. I read that you can have 3D textures. So, so extent. So, look at this separately then. Actually, I can just decompose this, right? Because doesn't this give me a tuple? Yeah, so I can just say let width height equal. And then these can just go away. And then this is just one, right? Map level count. Let's say 1. Sample count 1. Dimension 1. Format. Don't know. Going to cheat. Look at the tutorial. Texture format, right? Texture format. RGBA 8 unsigned normalized, right? Usage. Texture binding says that we want to use this texture in shaders. Copy destination means we want to copy, so we need both. Your usages, okay. We definitely want to copy destination ORed with what was it? Texture binding, right? Yep. View formats. Oh no. Okay, what is dimension? Expected a texture dimension. Okay. Texture dimension. The two-dimensional texture, right? View formats. Don't know what they mean there. So view formats. This is the same as with the surface config. It specifies what texture formats can be used to create texture views for this. The base texture format is always supported. So it's also not supported in WebGL2 backend to use a different format. So we just give it an empty slice. Cool. So did I do it the way they did it? Embed1, talk about this later, sample count 1, dimension. Yeah, I think they did sRGB, but I'm not doing sRGB. Okay, cool. I think I did it the way they did it. Depth, array layers 1, yep. They didn't unstructure the dimensions the same way. I like the way I did it because we just decompose it directly. Okay, and so then I can remove this and it should just. So now hopefully we get our image in. If I had the format right, found a unit type. That shouldn't be. Oh, because of the let. If I can get this to compile, then we'll get a texture in. We just don't. We aren't using it yet. Expected an option, found a texture. So this is map. Cool. So we should have a texture loaded into the GPU for that grass block. We just have to use it. So if I'm gonna guess and then look at the tutorial, I'm gonna guess that we need to like describe that we're going to use a texture, and then when we actually render, then we have to attach the buffer. See if I got that right. So we create the texture, getting data into the texture. Oh, I forgot to do that. Right, we just created it, we didn't load it in there. So to load it in there, we use a queue. Fair enough. So that's one thing I forgot. But yeah, still. See. What is this? The old way of writing data to texture was to copy the pixel data to a buffer and then copy to a texture? Oh, okay. So in case you want to put it into a buffer first, we will create a buffer initialized with the contents of the decoded image, and then create a command encoder, and then do copy buck for the texture, and then submit it. Okay, so we don't need to do that though. Yeah, texture views and samplers, right? So we create a view and a sampler, and those, I'm guessing, are used in the pass. How we use it. View a sampler. We're gonna do probably just a clamp to edge. I'm gonna want to do a min-meg filter of nearest to make it look like Minecraft. Look at that, they even said so. Right, the bind group. That's where we describe that we're going to have a texture. So we create a layout for the texture bind group, saying that we're going to have we're going to be giving it to the fragment shader. We're going to be giving it a texture. It has a certain dimension and type. Why do they have two bindings? Oh, because one's for the texture and one's for the sampler of the texture, right? I'm not used to that because I'm used to OpenGL. It just gives me a sampler for every texture. So we have to bind two things. The texture, I guess that's the view, texture view, and then the sampler. Okay. And then that's the description, that's the layout of the bind group. Then with the layout, we actually create the bind group using the layout. And then here's where we connect things together, right? We say for that first binding, use that texture view. For the second binding, use that sample that we made. And then I don't have to like, no, that is the binding. So this is the description of what we're gonna do. And this is actually binding it. Got it. This is the real Raimu code. Spent, how are you doing? It also seems to be an into RGBA8. Isn't that what I'm using? That's different code spaces based on image format. What am I using? I am using 2 RGBA8. You're saying I could do into instead of 2? Is that because this borrows? I think I do want the into version, right? Because this is going to copy, right? I want into because I don't need the original dynamic image. Yeah, thank you for that. Indeed, I want an into. Because after we're loading our buffer, we don't need the original dynamic image anymore. So that avoids a copy. Dimension 2, yeah, 2-dimensional image. Is a single pixel a 0-dimension texture? I don't know. How would that be useful? And why would you use a 1-dimensional texture? I guess if you're filling things with solid colors and you just want to pick a color from a palette of colors. Joel, I'm just trying to make it look painted in some way, and the this seemed like a really, really simple way to do it. Like, it's a recognizable texture. It's really easy for me to like hand compute the texture coordinates. So yeah, that's the only reason why. Not making a Minecraft clone. We're just like borrowing the texture for demonstration purpose. Okay, so then yeah, where we're gonna set this up, right? In the renderer. Warnings though. Don't need these. I also have errors. Let's fix the errors before we move on. Probably when we create the model, we're not giving anything. Yeah, so the ground has no image. The cube, though, we're going to like have a cube image file contents. And we need to put some in front of that. Okay, and then we will load it. Include bytes. So it's I put it in the app, so let's move it out to source. Yes. So it's just from that level, same directory, it's just gonna be grass.png. Okay, got some warnings, but I want to see if it crashes. It actually loads the image. And this is just complaining that, okay, well, I didn't actually need a lifetime here. It's complaining that we're not using the texture. That's fine, we will use it soon. I think what I want to do here is put in a debug message at some point, like right here, or info, so we can see it at first. Loaded texture of size, just to see that we get the dimensions out. I'll feel confident we actually decoded it. With actually, we can put those are single names, so we can put them inside the string now, right? Import that from log. We're good to go. One more warning. That's just the warning that we are not using the texture yet. I want to actually see it decode the texture. Then I'll connect it into the render pass, and then I'll connect it to the shader. Prophecy foretold of a dev so handsome, I couldn't muster the faith to believe it to know. Oh, why thank you, Code Spent. I am flattered. Although I would say that I will just say thank you. I only have another half an hour to go before I got to go to work, though. Will I get this in time? It seems like every stream now, since it's only 2 hours, 2.5 hours long, there's like a race to try to get done the one new addition to the sandbox that I'm trying to add. Like I spend the first half refactoring and the second half trying to add something new. So the compile time is taking longer because this time because we're pulling an image, which I guess is a pretty fat library, because it's hanging out in the list of things being built for a really long time, along with full tick, which is weird because why would it need to build that again? I don't know. There's our warning that we're not using the texture yet, which is fine. It is dead code, but we will resurrect it soon. Okay. Oh, it loaded it. It's 1024 by 1024. Is that actually how big it is? Yep, whole image 1024 1000. That's sort of unnecessarily large, don't you think? Seeing as how these are single colors, wouldn't it only really need to be like, well, 4 times the size of the number of pixels, which is what, 16? Should really only need to be 64 by 64. This seems like an extraordinarily large image, larger than it needs to be. Tempted to resize it down just because I can. Can I open with? How about we just go here, go up. Will image viewer let me save it as? Yeah, this is like bigger than it needs to be. I don't think this lets me edit it at all, right? Yeah, I don't have an editor set up in my virtual machine. Unless it came with Ubuntu. I don't even think I have what is it? What's the image, the GIMP, right? I don't even think I have the GIMP installed. Yeah, I don't even have the GIMP installed. How sad. We'll just leave it for now. Soon we'll have graphite. What's graphite? Soon. Is that an improvement? Is it an improvement to GIMP? You're eagerly awaiting knowledge of this graphite thing. Okay, so it loaded it. We went to set up the renderer to use it. Draw uses tools that we set up elsewhere. I think that's in the app we're setting it up. wgpu init, is this where I do it? No, that's where I set up the surface. I've forgotten where I put this. Is it in the new? The graphics engines, create our models, select other objects. Maybe it is in model renderer new. Yeah, here we go. Here's where we create our pipeline. Okay. So, where do we plug the bind group in? Okay, it's a bind group layout in the pipeline layout. So where do we create the pipeline layout? Here's where we create the pipeline layout. Here's the bind group layout. So in here we need to put our texture bind group layout. Right, texture. Okay, so that we would create here. Device create text. Whoop, not the bind group. Create texture. Do we not need to use the device to create it? So it's create bind group layout. There we go. And then descriptor. Group layout descriptor. Fill fields. Oh, it actually needs the layout, not the descriptor. This is the Oh no, that's right. What's the problem? Oh, it just needs to be borrowed. Fair enough. Okay. So label. Do I really care? Can I just put? I'll just do what I'm doing elsewhere there. It's some texture bind group. Capitalize like I'm doing everywhere else. Just for consistency. Okay, entries. Entries is what? It's okay, so we can have more than one, right? Okay. And we're gonna have two of them. We're gonna have two bind group layout entries. Fill structure fields. Fill structure fields. Okay. Type, right? Okay, binding is easy. That's the number. So it's 0 and 1. Count is none for both. I'm not sure what count is. Kind of am curious what it means. I'm gonna follow the documentation. What is count? If this value is sum, it indicates this entry is an array. Array size must be 1 or greater. If it's sum and the binding is a texture, it's a binding. Oh, it's a array of textures. We could put like more than one texture here. Cool. Well, we only have one, so it's none. Visibility was we need to say it's visible to the shader stage fragment. Shader stage is fragment. Shader stages fragment. Okay, and then this to do. Apparently it's different. So I binding type texture and binding type sampler. Right. Texture and binding type sampler. Oh, that is not a structure. It's a function of some kind. Oh no, it's an sampler binding type. Sampler binding type. Filtering, I guess. Well, I want to learn what that means though. So what's a filtering sampler binding type? Sampling result is produced based on more than a single color sample from a texture, e.g. when bilinear interpolation is enabled. Well, I don't need that. Can't I just use a single sample? So can't I just use a non-filtering? Yeah, I don't need bilinear filtering, whatever that is. Oh, kind of cringe. Just rated me with 95 people. You weren't streaming, by the way. You had, oh, Togglebit dumped it on you and you weren't streaming. See, oh, thank you for passing along the raid. And hello, Togglebit people. Hello. We're doing some more stuff in Rust, and looks like I actually still have it running, so I can show you right away what we're doing. This is like a playground where I am learning how to use libraries in Rust to do all of the things necessary to make that cube explosion, really. There's a physics engine called Rapier. There's a GUI up here with buttons and sliders. That's egui. And the graphics in general is wgpu, which is like a wrapper on top of your favorite graphics library like Vulkan or Metal or OpenGL or Direct 3D or whatever. And there are lots of integration libraries between them. And I'm trying to learn various aspects of the libraries. And right now I'm working on replacing the like rainbow shader stuff that I'm doing with actually a texture. So I just picked a random well-known texture. Maybe you recognize it. We're gonna draw this on all of our cubes, so it's gonna look like little Minecraft grass blocks. Done. That's what I'm working on. Came here after watching my Rust videos on YouTube. They're really good. Oh, thank you. Yeah, just picking a simple texture because you can see that this texture is really divided into 16 sub textures. So it's really easy to calculate the texture coordinates. Like that's 1/4, 1/2, 3/4, and 1, both horizontally and vertically. So I can just by hand compute the texture coordinates, the UV coordinates for the entire cube. Really easy because we can see that that's the bottom, that's the side, 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 other side, and then the top. It's just like how you'd unwrap a cube with one seam or one cut. Right here, we cut that. It's going to glue back onto here. I think. Got that right? Yeah. I guess we also cut these edges off, but you get the idea. Yeah, and I'm just setting up all the machinery in wgpu right now to actually use the texture when we're drawing in the fragment shader. So this is the stuff that's kind of like really new to me because it's done for you mostly in OpenGL. And that's where I come from. So in wgpu, you have to like set up these bind group layouts and these bind groups to say like, okay, how are we going to be sampling the texture and like what kind of texture are we going to use? So there's a lot of descriptors to set up, and then when we actually like we're using these descriptors by building them into a layout for the whole render pipeline, and then we actually draw. We just say, hey, use that layout we made at the beginning, and by the way, here's the texture buffer or texture, and it just works. So a lot of upfront grossness for the benefit of not having to deal with any of this during the render cycles. 2 linear interpolations of the corner pixels of 2 sides, and then another linear. So yeah, we don't need that. That's the one advantage of using this kind of a texture. So we're just going to be using nearest texel for any coordinate, right? When you blow this up or shrink it, it doesn't really change much. So you'd want to use that interpolation stuff if you're using like real photographic images, or if you have those mip maps where like you want to like improve the performance of looking at something like this from far away. If it's like a really complex image, but it's drawn really small, you don't need to draw every single texel. But we don't need to worry about any of that because this is an extremely simple texture, very low res. We want it to show like pixelated anyway, so we can skip a lot of the junk that normally you'd have to deal with. All right, let me know if you guys have any questions. I'm gonna stream for the next like 15-20 minutes, but then I gotta go to work. Multi-sampled. We don't need it to be multi-sampled. View dimension. I put the texture dimensions in there, right? Oh no, we just need to say that it's a 2-dimensional texture. That is texture view dimension. And I'm actually typing it all out just to like help get it into my memory. 2D texture, right? Sample type. Sample type is, oh, we have to tell it that it's a, well, it's not going to be a float, is it? Texture sample type. We'll look at that. Texture sample type. Float. Filterable. Specific type of sample. Let's say false. When in doubt, say no, right? So what is a texture sample type? Specific type of a sample in a texture binding. Corresponds to something in webGPU. So what's a float? Sampling returns floats. Actually, that's what we want. We want to get a float when we sample our texture, because That's how we roll inside a fragment shader, right? This is false. The texture can't be sampled with this filtering sampler. That's fine because we're specifically set up a non-filtering type. For simplicity, I set that up somewhere. Yeah, right here, non-filtering sampler. Cool. So now I have a bind group layout for our texture and its sampler. We're saying that we're going to use the texture in the fragment shader. We're going to get back floats. It's going to be a 2D texture. It's not sampled. There's no array. There's only one of it, and we're going to bind the texture to slot 0 and the sampler to slot 1. So that becomes important when I update the shader. These slot numbers have to be correct in the shader. And then we put that layout in the bind group layouts of the overall pipeline layout. And then now I have to remember when we create the pipeline to fill in the texture bind group, right? So let me see if I can guess where that would be. Probably that's what we're drawing to in the fragment shader, but wouldn't it be around here somewhere? Or maybe not. Okay, obviously I'm not able to guess it, so let's look at the tutorial. This is the tutorial, by the way, that I'm following, if you wanted to take a look at it. So, here it is. We create a bind group. What do we do with it? We're going to use it later. Right. This is the new thing, right? When the render pass gets set up, it needs to have a bind group that matches what's in the layout description of the pipeline. So we create one of these and then use it later, creating a bind group. Okay, create a bind group. We have to store it somewhere. Where are we going to put it? In self, I guess. Really? We're only right now creating the pipeline? Huh. Okay. So sure, it doesn't really matter. I can create it after I create the pipeline. What are we calling this thing? Diffuse? Why is it diffuse? Right, bind group. Let's just call it our texture bind group. Tools, device, create bind group. It needs a description, bind group descriptor. Then fill those fields for me. Got a layout. Texture bind group. I believe that's for debugging only. Layout. Not sure what they mean there. Oh, that's what we made before. Texture bind group layout. That thing. Entries. So that's going to be a slice of some kind, right? And it's probably going to have two entries, right? One for the texture, one for the sampler. Right. So bind group entry is the name. Bind group. I should have been able to guess that, right? Duplicate that. Binding is 0 and 1, right? Resource. Oh, I think this is why I didn't want to do it here, because we actually have to have the texture. No, but we do start out with the texture. So I can do this, right? So binding. Oh, enjoy your food, Jolt Jab. Started learning Rust and it's been 2 weeks. Can you tell me anti-patterns in Rust? Any reference material would be nice. I wish I had that reference material handy right now to give you, but off the top of my head, some anti-patterns in Rust would be to borrow too much, and then you run afoul of the borrow checker. Don't worry too much about doing the wrong thing in Rust, because the borrow checker and the compiler will teach you. You just have to be patient and prepared to be schooled by the Rust compiler. It's actually pretty hard to develop an anti-pattern in Rust because you won't get very far. The compiler just won't let you do stupid stuff, right? But if you want to try to avoid some of the frustration, when you're first learning, don't borrow too much, like these ampersands, unless you really have to. Try to make things value types. Yeah, use Clippy. Use like this is like it'll tell you, hey, this is too big. You should try to make your code smaller. Turn on Clippy. Instead of using these borrows, if you can get away with it, make things value types that can be copied around. Or if they can't be copied, use clone, and don't worry about the fact that it's not as good performance. You'll have some extra copies, but it'll free you up from needing to worry about all the rules about how to share things when you do borrows. And then it'll free you up so that you can focus on learning the other parts of the language. And then when you're more comfortable, you can go back and see about, can I remove some of my clones and copies that are unnecessary and use borrows instead. And I think when you're learning, it's an anti-pattern to try to use the more advanced parts of the language until you're comfortable. Okay, what else? What else would there be an anti? Yeah, I think the Clippy answer is great because Clippy is designed to detect anti-patterns and teach you not to do them. So this anti-pattern right now, that the function has too many lines. Great example, right? It's going to annoy me with these yellow squiggly lines until I try to reduce the size of my function. Now, it is pretty arbitrary on 100. You can silence it like it says. You can just take this warn and turn it into an allow and put it at the top of your function, which is exactly what I'm going to do now. But I try to make it a discipline that when I suppress warnings, that I always follow it up with a to-do saying that this needs to be refactored. Because my order of operations in developing software is, number one, just get it to work. It can be really horrible hacks and everything, just make it functional. Number two is you go back and you refactor to make it readable and basically make it right. And then if it's too slow, then and only then do you go and do performance optimizations. Right? You go and see, is it slow because I'm cloning something that's huge and I can not clone it and make my program faster. That I wait until both it works and I can read the code. Because just let me tell you, you don't want to work on optimizing code that you can't read. And you definitely don't want to optimize code that doesn't work. It needs to work and you need to be able to read it before you have any chance of like optimizing it. So this is a resource. Did I get that right? Yes. Texture view. Where'd my cursor go? Give me my cursor back. Texture view. Okay, and then it needs the texture view. We'll need to make one. All right, no problem. We'll make one in a sec. I promise. So this is a sampler. So we need to have a texture sampler. Kind of doing the code backwards. I like having the compiler guide me on what I need to do. Basically with the red lines, or sometimes yellow, it'll tell me, hey, you haven't written this yet. Can't find the texture view. We need to make one. So I would do that here, right? Let that equal, and I'm guessing we do that through device. Create texture view. Nope. Create view. No. So I'm not guessing it correctly, so I look back at the tutorial. Oh, it's from the texture we create a view. Okay, so we have the texture, right? Texture, do we not have the texture yet? Oh, we don't have the texture yet. Yeah, this is when we're creating the render from at the very start. So we don't have the texture yet. So let's move this somewhere else to where we do have it. Yeah, that's why this self doesn't have a lot of things, because we can't really make that. We can't really make the thing to give to the render pass until we actually have the actual texture, and that doesn't happen until we create the model, right? So that's in models. Model new up here. Yeah, here we have the texture, right? So let's move that out, create the texture, and then we can create the other things. So I have code in the clipboard. We need to paste it. We're going to need that, and we're going to need this texture. So this is the texture. I already know I'm going to have a little bit of a problem because that's an optional texture, so we might not have one. So then that means this whole model has an optional side of things. It's not just the texture. So we're going to have a substructure, right? So this is like texture stuff. Texture stuff. So in texture stuff, there's the texture itself. And then we're going to have that texture bind group, right? That we give to the render pass. So texture bind. Come on, help me out, autocomplete. You can do it. Maybe it can't. It can't. Asking autocomplete to do too much for me. Oh, it's just bind group. That's why. Bind group. Okay, so then when we so this is really a texture stuff that we plug in here. Okay, so it's if we actually have an image file and we're able to load it, then we get a texture, and then we're going to create a texture bind group, and we're going to end up returning texture stuff. So texture and the texture bind group, which is right here, and I just need to move it. So cut and paste and import the things. Okay, that's a problem. We'll need to find where that layout, how to get that layout in here. First things first, so let's import all the things. Okay, we'll need to make the view, and we'll need to make the sampler. So make the view first. This should go here. Okay, we got an indentation problem with many problems that we're dealing with, one at a time. Let that equal, I think I just do this and I do create view. Then I need a texture view descriptor. One thing leads to another. Struct fields, okay. Look at all this junk we have to tell. The label, some texture view. Format. Let me guess. It's going to be texture format RGBA8U norm. Okay, what's the big deal with the error here? Expect, okay, we need to borrow it. This is a borrow. No, it's not a borrow. This needs to be a borrow. There we go. Expect an option, so I need to put it, wrap that in some. Why would the format be optional? Dimension, we know that. That's like texture dimension D2, right? Think of performance even before you write the code. You usually shouldn't, but you do. I mean, you can shortcut the process. If you can, in one pass, write code that works, is written well, and is performant, do it. I can't most of the time. usually these days I can't even make code that looks good the first pass, so I need all 3 passes. Um, it's how whatever you're comfortable with, experienced at. If you can shortcut the process, do it. For beginners, they usually can't shortcut the process. So I like to say if you're just beginning, consider doing them in steps. So first make your code work, then make it readable, and then make it fast enough if it needs to be. Okay, you import please. There we go. Okay, aspect rate. That's the aspect ratio. Wouldn't that be the width divided by the height? I'm doing a lot of guessing here, so let me look and see how they did it. Oh, they just used the default. Okay. Then why am I doing this? We still need to borrow, but I guess this is all defaultable. Good thing I read the tutorial first, right? Okay, the sampler is harder to do. We actually need a descriptor. I'm getting kind of tired. Why don't I just copy all this and paste it? I mean, that way I don't have to do as much typing, and we'll just read and see what it does. So there's how we address the different coordinates. So clamp to edge is fine. Linear mag filter. I don't want it to. I want this to be nearest, I think, in mag and min. Default. Oh, that's that cool feature where, like, if there's anything else in the sampler descriptor, just fill in a default sampler descriptor and then override it with these things. So I really don't care about W. Let it be the. Is there a default for that? Yes, there is. I'm not using a mip map either. So, well, but what if one gets added for me? I do want it to be nearest. Okay, now I think I'm down to just not having the bind group layout available here. And what's wrong with texture stuff? Oh, is it just called texture? We should just call it texture stuff. Right. Can't think of a good name. Call it thing or call it stuff. Step 1 is to make it work? Yes. You're telling me you haven't even completed step 1? Sorry, code spent. When you write code, it has to work. Now, if it's too hard to get it to work, consider splitting your code into smaller pieces and then make the pieces individually work, then fit them together, make the whole work. And then, hey there, a faux G. How you doing? Okay, I need to think. This bind group needs a layout. Am I creating other bind groups elsewhere? Looks like I am. That's where I created it. That's where I need it. And I'm not doing it anywhere else. Okay, then how does this work? Close some other unrelated things. So the model needs the layout. Layout we created in the renderer. And we didn't actually hold on to it. We just used it to set up the render pipeline. But we need to keep it around. So I guess we'll need to store it in the renderer. Where do we create the renderer? Okay, we create a model renderer in the app. Okay, so if we created the model renderer in the app and the model renderer has the layout for the textures, I think we'd want to do that before we create the models, because The models need to have that bind group ready. So I'll just set this up beforehand. Set that up before I make our models. Set up our model render and borrow its texture stuff. What is it? Texture something. Texture bind group layout. For use by the model constructors. Alt. Oh, nope, that was the wrong key. That quit the whole code. Good thing that we don't actually lose anything. So what is my wrap key? Alt Q. I must have hit Control Q. Ah, that's the problem. If Control Q quits the whole thing and we wanted Alt Q, then I got a problem, right? Make my window a little bit wider so we can see all the way to 80 columns. But then it's intersecting with my chat. Oh, because the window's not all the way to the left. There. Little layout issues. There we go, I fixed it. So close. I'm a perfectionist. Can you tell that I want the 80 columns to be right there so the chat lines up right there? Okay, so the thing that we made in new, this texture bind group layout, I want it out here. So do I just make it public or do I ask for it politely? I think we'll ask for it politely. So then this one will have a public method, which borrows from self and returns a borrowed of the type of this thing, which is bind group layout. Which just takes self and borrows the field of the same name, which we haven't stored yet, but we will soon. That will go into the renderer here. So then that needs to be imported. And then I just simply add that to the self at the bottom here. Right down here. Okay, so I have some warnings to clear up. We don't need bind descriptor, bind group, descriptor entry, all that stuff. Don't need it. Back in the models, it already is a borrow, but we need to pass it in. Borrowed bind group layout import. Okay, and then back in app, then we can just pass that in. Cool. My other error. Okay, the other error is oh. Ground doesn't have one though, right? So then yeah, we'll make it optional. So the ground doesn't need to have a bind group layout, so this one does have one. Oh, actually it could it could get it. It just won't use it. Okay, and now I have too many lines. What happens? Keep writing code, eventually you have too much code, right? This one needs a big fat to do. Needs refactoring. I gotta finish. I don't know if I'll get this done in time. I might have to wait till tomorrow to actually get this to work. So close though. Let's see if I can like push this to get it working. Okay, so it sets up the texture stuff. We're just not using it. The final stage is when we're rendering to actually use it, right? So that's in the renderer. But we have some warnings. Warnings because we're not using it. That probably means that the render is going to want to pull out the texture stuff. So that means we're probably going to want to make these public. Probably just the bind group though, right? Oh, we'll make it. No, we won't need that. Actually, I'm wondering how this works. Where does the view? The view gets kind of absorbed into the bind group, right? So does the sampler, but it's borrowed. How does that actually work? The binding resource, is it just like copied or something? The descriptor lasts as long as that borrow does, but the descriptor is only used was only used for the whole duration of creating the bind group. Oh, cool, because it does like a clone of stuff. It probably copies what it needs out, right? Yeah, I'm not going to worry too much about it. I don't think the texture we actually need to hold on to because it gets absorbed into the bind group. So what if I just delete that for now? We'll add it back if it needs to be there. So I just don't need it. We only need to hold on to the bind group, I think. But I will probably need... The renderer will probably need to get the texture stuff out, right? Okay, when the renderer is actually asked to render, what does it do? It's given the subject, which borrows the model. And how do we use that model? Is it actually never used? No, it is used. Oh, it is reaching into there. And we can do that because models is a child of the render is a child of the model module. So it can do that. So that means I don't need to expose texture stuff through a getter. The renderer can just grab it now. Okay, cool. So then that is here, right? That's the final step. That when it's used, they bind it to the render pipeline. Did I skip something here? No, I don't think I did. Yeah, it's this set bind group when we set the pipeline, right? So if let some texture stuff equal model dot texture stuff, we're gonna borrow from it. Then render path dot set bind group 0 to texture stuff. Offset, I don't know. Do we need to set anything there? Texture stuff dot bind group, right? Texture bind group. Need to be borrowed? It does. Cool. Yeah, they didn't set anything for that offsets either. All right, then it all gets into the shader and we're not using it. Let me make sure it doesn't crash. If it doesn't crash, then the last step is to actually use the shader, use the texture in the shader to draw stuff. Nope, I have a problem. Do I just always have to set it? Contains a bind group layout, which is incompatible associated with the bind group. I see. So we have to provide one even if we don't have a texture. Can I should be able to make that optional though. Be exactly here. Wait, no, no, it's not here. It was in the, I can't remember. Models? It was in renderer new. That's where it was. Yes, this texture bind group layout. We don't want to always. Well, no, this is saying that if you use this render, you have to have a texture and sampler. So what do I do for the ground which doesn't use it? Yeah, I don't think I'm gonna get this done today because I need to decide like if we set up one pipeline that expects that needs to have a texture, what do I do if I don't want to have the texture? Kind of implies that I need two renderers, one that uses a texture and one that doesn't. Or I just don't bind an actual view to it. Can I like have an empty texture? I need to think about that. Are you streaming from this PC? See a code spent? This is what I'm streaming from. I'm streaming from a virtual machine running Ubuntu. The host is a Mac Studio running Parallels. Control W close the tab is close to Control Q. Yeah, it makes me think I should like unbind the close, like key shortcuts. There's one for like close the window. No, the one I was hitting was this one. Yeah, I can just remove workbench action quit, and then I won't accidentally close close VS Studio, VS Code. But when I accidentally do, like I do that, oops, I just open it again, and it like brings me back, and I never even lose any work, and it's really fast. So maybe I don't worry about it too much. Yeah. So yeah, this crash I can't solve easily unless I remove the ground. I guess that's what we'll leave it at. We won't draw the ground for now. So where do I draw the ground and we'll temporarily not draw the ground. So where is that done? In draw models? Well, if we just never add the instance to the set, then we'll never know to draw it. So that happens in new right here. So if we just never add the ground instance, right? Now it won't accidentally, it won't crash. It should draw the cubes though, we just won't see the ground. Oh, it still crashes. At the render, we got a none somewhere. Model instance. Oh, is it still trying to draw the ground? No, that's something else. This unwrap panicked. Why? Because we didn't have a per instance buffer. Why not? What model are we drawing? Call hierarchy, please. Draw models, which is called by draw. Well, I mean, we never put it in self model instances, so that's not it. It's something. It's some other thing. It's not related to the ground anymore. Like I could even comment out the ground model completely, and it's still going to crash, right? Seems. Oh no, that was it. So why would commenting out the ground model completely fix things? I don't know, but yeah. So excuse the fact that the ground is invisible, but so we should be getting the texture all the way to the shader. We're just not using it, and it's going to take me a little bit of time to fix that without. Well, actually, how much time would it take to actually use the texture? It's going to take me a little bit of time because I haven't actually gotten to the point where I figured out the texture coordinates. I haven't added that to the vertex shader and all that stuff. This sounds like a task for tomorrow. How long have I been using Rust for? About 3 years now. I think someone reminded me that I started learning it in the middle of 2020. Trying to learn it by reading the book, that's a great way to start. People who ask me how to start, I say start here at rustlang.org/learn, and you either read the book, do the Rustlings course, or follow their code examples. And if you want to learn more about the wgpu, since you ran that command, that's what I'm learning it from. So yeah, I guess I'll have to leave you guys with what we have so far, and excuse the lack of ground, but we'll add the ground back tomorrow and hopefully make those cubes look like grass blocks from Minecraft. But unfortunately, I'm out of time. Many people started learning new stuff in the middle of 2020. I mean, it makes sense. We were sort of quarantining here and there, and what else to do but sit and learn stuff, right? So I have this thing called work that I have to go do now, but I should be back tomorrow. Who should we go raid in the meantime? Fritz is ending. Oh bother's starting. Oh bother's not software, but still kind of fun. He's actually chatting, even though still does stream starting soon. We'll set up to raid him. That was a fun guy to watch. He's a guy who tinkers with a lot of hardware and does software occasionally, but at one point, I don't know if he still has it, but he had like a block of wood on his wall that if you sub to his channel, a laser would inscribe your name on that block of wood, which I always thought was really cool. And unfortunately, I'm watching an ad, but yeah, I'll be able to hear what he's saying as soon as the ad's done. See you guys tomorrow, okay? Bye.